towards a peaceful division, rethinking Nigeria's unity for lasting stability. In a reflective moment captured in his remarks, former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan revisited the foundational doubts about Nigeria's unity expressed by the nation's early leaders. By quoting Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Sir Ahmadu Bello, and others, Jonathan highlighted a persistent truth. Nigeria, as a unified entity, has long been more of a colonial construct than a natural nation. These words, spoken decades ago, resonate today amid ongoing ethnic tensions, resource disputes, and calls for self-determination. It is time to consider a bold path forward not through conflict, but through a peaceful reconfiguration of the country. Dividing Nigeria along ethnic lines could foster genuine peace, allowing regions like Biafra and other ethnic nationalities to thrive independently. The African Union, AU, and the international community must step in to support this process, ensuring it unfolds democratically and without violence. Jonathan's statement serves as a poignant reminder of Nigeria's fractured origins. He quoted Awolowo, the former premier of the Western region, who described Nigeria as not a nation, but a mere geographical expression, emphasizing that the term Nigerian merely distinguishes those within its borders from outsiders. This view underscores the artificial amalgamation of diverse peoples in 1914 by British colonial authorities, without regard for cultural, linguistic, or historical affinities. Similarly, Jonathan referenced Bello, the northern region's premier, who noted that 60 years prior, referring to pre-colonial times, Nigeria comprised several large and small communities, all of which were different in their outlooks and beliefs. Bello argued that British rule and Western education had failed to forge a true composite unit. Finally, the third quote, attributed to a key figure in Nigeria's early history, stated that the Nigerian people themselves are historically different in their backgrounds, in their religious beliefs and customs, and do not show themselves any sign of willingness to unite, labeling Nigerian unity as only a British intention for a country. These insights from Nigeria's founding fathers are not relics of the past. They explain the persistent instability that has plagued the nation since independence in 1960. The Biafran War, 1967 to 1970, which claimed millions of lives, was a tragic manifestation of these divisions, driven by Igbo marginalization and fears of domination by other groups. Today, similar grievances fuel insurgencies, Boko Haram's terror in the north, and agitating movements in the southwest. Economic disparities exacerbate the issue. The oil-rich south feels exploited, while the agrarian north grapples with poverty. Forced unity has bred corruption, nepotism, and inefficiency, as evidenced by Nigeria's ranking as one of the world's most fragile states. A peaceful division could address these by allowing each region to govern according to its values and resources, potentially leading to stronger, more accountable states.
In my mind, I started thinking about how we've been having this conversation about the unity of Nigeria. And I reflect back at some of the prominent statements made by some of our founding leaders. And I feel that probably this will help us to have a conversation on the Nigerian unity. I just brought forth, not to bore you. First, and I quote, not my statement, Nigeria is not a nation. It's a mere geographical expression. There are no Nigerians in the same sense as there are English, Welsh, or French. The word Nigerian is merely a distinctive appellation to distinguish those who live within the boundaries of Nigeria from those who do not. This is accredited to Chief Obafemi Awolowo, the former Prime Minister of the Western region. The second one, and I quote, it is true that we politicians always delight in talking loosely about the unity of Nigeria. 60 years ago, there was no country called Nigeria. What is now Nigeria consisted of several large and small communities, all of which were different in their outlooks and beliefs. The advent of the British and that of Western education has not materially altered the situation, and the many and varied communities have not knit themselves into a composite unit. This is accredited to Sir Ahmadu Bello, former Premier of Northern Region. They thought, and I quote, "Since 1914, the British government has been trying to make Nigeria into one country. But the Nigerian people themselves are historically different in their backgrounds, in their religious beliefs and customs, and do not show themselves any sign of willingness to unite. The Nigerian unity is only a British intention for the country."
Advocates for Biafra, representing the Igbo people, argue that self-determination is a right enshrined in international law, including the UN Charter and the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Biafra's proponents envision a sovereign nation focused on innovation, education, and trade, free from the burdens of a dysfunctional federation. Similarly, other ethnic nationalities, such as the Yoruba in the southwest, who have floated ideas of an Oduduwa Republic, or the diverse groups in the Middle Belt seeking autonomy, deserve the opportunity to chart their futures. This is not about disintegration for its own sake, but about creating viable entities where peace can flourish. Historical precedents abound. The peaceful dissolution of Czechoslovakia into Czechia and Slovakia in 1993, or the amicable separation of Sudan and South Sudan, despite later challenges, show that division can prevent greater violence. The African Union, as the continent's premier body for promoting peace and integration, has a moral and legal obligation to facilitate this process. The AU's Constitutive Act emphasizes self-determination and conflict resolution, and it has mediated similar disputes in Ethiopia and Somalia. By convening a high-level dialogue involving Nigerian stakeholders, the AU could oversee referendums in affected regions, ensuring transparency and international oversight. The world at large, the United Nations, European Union, and major powers like the United States and China must lend support through diplomatic pressure, technical assistance, and economic incentives. Ignoring these calls risks escalating tensions into another humanitarian crisis, as seen in Yemen or Syria. Instead, global leaders should champion a velvet divorce model, where assets are equitably divided, borders are negotiated, and trade agreements bind the new states in cooperation. Critics may argue that division weakens Africa against neo-colonial influences, but true strength lies in voluntary unity, not imposed amalgamation. Jonathan's invocation of these historical quotes invites us to honor the wisdom of our forebears by evolving beyond a flawed structure. For Nigeria's 200 million people, peace through partition could unlock prosperity, reduce ethnic strife, and set a positive example for the continent. It is time for action. I call upon the African Union to initiate an emergency summit on Nigeria's future, inviting representatives from Biafra, Yorubaland, Arewa, and other groups. The international community must rally behind this, providing monitors for fair plebiscites and aid for transitional governments. Only through such support can Nigeria's diverse peoples achieve the harmony they deserve, not as one coerced nation, but as peaceful neighbors.